So 101, we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to share my screen, but as always, would love to see any questions that you have come through. It is a little bit easier to keep track of the questions if they're submitted through the Q&A functionality as opposed to the chat. I do love chat participation as well, but if you want to make sure that I see it, it's a little bit easier because they kind of like stack up in a separate list if you put them through the Q&A. This is recorded. We'll send out the slides afterwards, and we'll send the recording as well. Great. So we are here to talk about programmatic advertising. So under the hood of how does display advertising actually work, and they'll talk about a few other forms of programmatic that are included beyond display. But yeah, that's what we're talking about here today. As a quick intro, some of you probably know, I'm the co-founder and president of Feathr. Feathr is a marketing tech company, and we have about 130 people based here, mostly in Gainesville, although now increasingly remote. We serve the not-for-profit world. Not-for-profits of various types, ranging from professional associations to charities, museums, theaters, and everything in between. So we have about 1,300 not-for-profits we work with, and we help with digital marketing, and particularly digital advertising. So this is a topic that we have a lot of data and a lot of experience around, and I'm happy to share some more of it with you here today. So I'm just going to rearrange my windows so I can keep track of questions in chat. Perfect. So programmatic advertising, what is it? How does it work? I think it's easiest just to jump right into an example of retargeting, right? Website retargeting, particularly for online shopping. This is something we're all familiar with, right? So you go to a website, say H&M, you look at some specific articles of clothing, and maybe you're doing back to school shopping for your kids, and then you don't buy anything, right? You go to read some articles online or browse the web, and ads for the specific articles of clothing that we're looking at, they start following you around, right? They show up on multiple other websites, right? Not a coincidence. This is a very intentional effort to retarget you based on the fact that you were recently on that website looking at those products, right? So website retargeting, and particularly this kind of online retail use case, this is kind of retargeting 101. This is the most common form of programmatic advertising. So programmatic advertising is kind of the parent category of using data and digital signals, like visiting a website, to target ads to specific people at specific times, potentially on specific websites. So that kind of like data-driven targeting of online ads. That's how I can think of this. So this is particularly in contrast to how traditional ad sales was done, right? And so particularly, you think about print media, right? If you're printing 25,000 copies of a magazine or of a newspaper, right? You have specific ad spaces in that magazine, and you need to sell them in advance. And then everybody who gets that magazine is seeing the same ad in the same place, right? Because you're printing 25,000 copies of an identical magazine. And that traditionally, that ad exchange process, that was a salesperson, right? Talking to a marketer or an advertiser, and it's a sales-driven process with humans interacting. Programmatic advertising is driven by the buyer. So you, as a marketer, as an advertiser, the power's in your hands as opposed to in a salesperson, and it's all automated. So there is no human-to-human interaction. It's happening with essentially computers talking to each other. So you, as a marketer and advertiser, you're inputting your who you're trying to reach and why, and the ads you want, how much you're willing to pay. We'll get into this a little bit more. And then some algorithms are sorting out where your ads get placed and which transactions you win. So it's automated as opposed to a salesperson talking to you. And it's more of a buyer-driven process as opposed to a seller-driven process. To show a few more examples that maybe are a little bit more relevant here, right? So Degrees of Change, this is a nonprofit. They have a scholarship program, and you can see if someone was visiting the website about their scholarship, but then didn't apply, they might then start being retargeted with ads about applying for this scholarship, right? This is a real example. We actually just did a case study on them. And so you can see here, visiting the website, not buying it, leaving, ads start showing up, following you on your phone and your news apps, et cetera, to drive you back. This is another example here with a membership-based professional association where you visit that association website, you're clicking around, and then ads about the benefits of joining as a member start following you around, right? So it's not just for products, in terms of like online retail or e-commerce or physical products. It's not just for, for profit. It can be used to drive any type of behavior that you want, whether that's apply for a scholarship, join a membership, et cetera. just to show a few different examples here. So if I was to offer a definition of programmatic advertising, it's the automated process of buying digital ad inventory, and it's driven by the advertiser. You are setting targeting criteria, and your ads are reaching the people you're trying to reach throughout the web. So a little bit more about how that happens. Well, in this case, with the retargeting example, you have a site visitor going to a website, and there's something called a cookie, right? A third-party cookie, a tracking cookie, and that is what's used to track this person of like, okay, I'm dropping this cookie, right? A little tiny text file in the browser of the person loading the website, and that little text file that sits in your browser, that can be seen by other websites. And so when you go to another website, they can see that you are the same person. And cookies aren't the only way this is done by any means. You can do this with a mix of device IDs and with other unique identifiers. There's a whole cottage industry of trying to tie multiple devices back to the same human behind them. IP addresses are sometimes in the mix here. There's a lot of different data that's used for this. And that's how to do something like cross-device targeting, like what's seen here. If you're on a computer and you're also on a phone, how are they able to track you? There's a lot of ways that could be done. But essentially, you visit a website, they're able to track you. You go to another website, that website can see this little bit of information and can use that to determine, okay, I have an ad slot. I need to decide how to fill it. And I'm going to use whatever I know about the person who's visiting my website this second to show them an ad. And this is why if you and I go to the same website at the same time right now on our phones, we'll probably see different ads because the ads are loading in real time based on your cookies versus mine, based on your device ID versus mine, based on your location or IP address versus mine, right? So we will actually see different ads load. This is maybe a more like slightly more technical way of looking at this, where you have something in the middle here. You have a website with ad space. You have advertisers on this side trying to get their ads to load. And in the middle, you have something called an ad exchange. And that's kind of the mediator of this process. So website has an ad slot while the website is loading. So someone visits the page, that's step one. Step two then is they say, hey, ad exchange, my website's loading. I have this space. Who's willing to pay the most money for it right now? Who wants to reach this specific website visitor who's visiting my page right now? The ad exchange then goes to the advertisers and says, who's trying to reach this person, this website? Here's the information I have. Who wants this ad slot? And again, this is happening literally while the web page is loading. So in like less than 100 milliseconds, an auction takes place. The advertiser bids are put in, and again, the ad exchange is kind of this central place between the website, the supply of ad slots, and then the advertisers who are trying to purchase those ad slots. And so the ad exchange will return, this is the winner of the bid, and that's the ad that loads here. So multiple people, multiple advertisers might try to reach the same person at the same time, but only one of them can load, and only one of them will get there. So that's kind of the step-by-step process how that plays out. Again, this is happening essentially in a split second, all while that page is loading. It's trying to decide which ads to load and why multiple people would see different ads if you load the same page. So that process is what's called real-time bidding. So RTB, real-time bidding, you might see that phrase thrown around. Programmatic advertising, real-time bidding, they tend to be referring to the same thing, but technically speaking, real-time bidding is like the how. That's the process I just outlined. And again, it is an auction, so you are bidding, you're buying that ad spot in real time, and usually it's a fraction of a cent for each individual ad placement. And the most expensive, it's like 1 or 2 cents for each individual ad placement. Because of that, it's generally more useful rather than saying what was the cost per individual time an ad shows. It's talked about in thousands. What was the cost to show this ad 1,000 times, right? And usually that comes out to a single-digit dollar number. So for programmatic display advertising, normally it's around $5 to show an ad 1,000 times. And that might be 1,000 people each seeing it one time. It might be 100 people who saw it 10 times, right? Usually it's actually some mix. Some people see it more or less, but you can set that as well. Like I only want to bid this much. So you can set your maximum bid when you put your advertising criteria in. And you can also say, I don't want to reach people more than this many times. I don't want a frequency cap. I don't want to show the same person my ad more than 2 times a day, 5 times a day, 10 times ever, right? You can set those types of criteria. So those are some of the definitions. Hopefully this is helpful. I'm going to keep moving if I don't see any questions, but feel free, if anything's unclear, to submit something through the chat or through the Q&A, and I can try to circle back to it. So there's a lot of different, both ad units, like different types of ads that are supported by this, as well as different ways to target those ads. So I'm going to talk about both of those real quick. So in terms of the ad units, or the types of ads that can be deployed via programmatic advertising in this real-time bidding process, the most common one far away is display advertising. And display, this is what's colloquially called banner ads. So I make the point here that traditionally banner ads were just like a flat image, but now display advertising actually includes the ability to do lots of interesting things, like ads that are animated. Generally HTML5 is the method for doing that. So you can have ads that have text fly in and out, or that have images that change, or that have like a small little, almost like mini video of sorts play out. So you can have animated ads. You can have ads that just have one image. You can have ads that have like a rotating set of images, but still each one is flat. So you can do a lot of different things within the category of display advertising. And also some specific types of placements, they may just be there, like on the side or in the header, right, when it loads. But sometimes the website will load and then a display ad of a header will push down, right? So it's animates kind of as part of where the placement is on the screen. You may have also seen on mobile, right, advertising while scrolling through maybe a news app, where sometimes it almost looks like the ad is being revealed like behind the text, and then it takes up the full screen, and as you continue to swipe through it, and then it kind of goes away. But instead of the ad itself moving, it's more like the website moves to reveal the ad and then moves to cover back up. So there's a lot of like more interesting and nuanced methods to the display of display ads now. It's not always just a traditional banner ad, but that's by far the most common within programmatic advertising, is banner ads or these kind of animated versions of banner ads. As a point of interest, over 90% of display advertising across the internet is through programmatic display advertising. So less and less and less common is there ad placements on websites that are the traditional direct sales, or like a direct placement where you're talking to a salesperson and then like buying out the header slot on a website. That accounts for less than 10% of all display advertising on the internet. 90% is now done through ad exchanges, programmatic advertising. But display is not the only, by any means, form of ad unit that can be served through this programmatic advertising process. Another one, the next most popular, is video advertising. And so the most common form of this is usually what's called pre-roll. So pre-roll videos are a video ad that plays before a video plays, right? So everyone has encountered this on YouTube in particular, right? You go to YouTube, and maybe there's a 5-second or a 15-second video ad that plays before you can watch the video you're trying to watch, right? Or you go to CNN.com and you're trying to watch a news clip, right? Like a 3-minute news clip, and there might be a 15-second video ad that plays before that news clip plays, right? For that matter, sports highlights on ESPN, same idea, right? So pre-roll is that 5, 10, 15-second ad that will play before a video plays. But those aren't the same for every person. Same thing, which video ad loads for you versus for me might be different, right? Because those video ads are being placed in real time. They're kind of being like inserted dynamically right before your video plays. And again, it's done based on your recent browsing criteria, or your recent browsing activity, your location, your IP address, your device ID, your cookies, all those things are brought to bear. There's also some phrases you may have heard recently, connected TV, or over the top, OTT. So CTV and OTT are both kind of newer things around, like we have these smart TVs now, and maybe we have, whether that's things like Apple TV and Roku, and you have just things beyond traditional cable, and increasingly like television in your living room is actually an internet connected device, and therefore there are opportunities through that and through some other things to get video ads in those placements as well. So OTT and CTV are newer forms of getting video ads and generally targeting things like smart TVs and devices in the living room as opposed to on your computer. All right, so to keep rolling here, so native advertising, native ads, there are also several formats of this that can be done through programmatic advertising. The usual one is if you think about a news website that has like Taboola or Outbrain, right? They'll say like, sponsored content or related content, and then like via Outbrain. A lot of times those are very clickbaity looking stories or titles or content pieces, but they are, a title and a description of and then an image, but generally clicking through to an article. So generally they are written content in the same form, like blog articles or whatever, of whatever website you're looking at. It's just they will be not an article on the same website. It'll click off to an article or some kind of content piece that someone else, a different website. But that ad unit isn't just, in that case, a banner ad. It's kind of like this combination of like, header text, subtext, and image. And it's arranged in a way that it looks like an article in the same way that the rest of that news website or blog's website has other articles you can click, and it'll have the sponsored content. Those are actually ad units that were, programmatic advertising is what placed the specific ad units there. So you may not realize that those are just dynamically placed ads and which articles show up for you versus for me. Again, it's all being targeted based on specifics of who we are and our recent behavior. So that's the most common form of native advertising. But really, native advertising refers to an ad that looks like whatever the rest of the content in that app or on that website looks like. But almost always it's like this kind of written content placed on a website, like a news website that has lots of other articles and written content. So that's by far the most common form. And the last form here, this is another new and fast growing area in the programmatic advertising world, is digital audio. And so programmatic advertising now, you can also place audio snippets. This is often through podcasts or through digital radios, things like iHeartRadio and things like that. When people are listening to radio online, the ad spots there. Some of them are done live, right? Live reads in the traditional radio format, but others are dynamically inserted, just like how programmatic advertising for a display ad is dynamically inserted. So same thing. We may be listening to the same podcast, but we may hear different ads, or we may be listening to the same, online radio station, but you might be hearing different ads than me. Same idea. So it might be like a 10-second or a 15-second or a 30-second audio ad, but it's being placed in real time based on, again, cookies, et cetera. So these are the four main categories. Again, display is far and away the most popular, video next, but these are, some more options. All can be targeted in the same manner, real-time bidding for programmatic advertising. So I've mentioned indirectly a few of the ways that these ads get targeted, but I'm going to walk through a few more. So site retargeting, this is the first one. This is the one we showed at the beginning, right? So site retargeting, this is kind of programmatic advertising 101. It's you visit a website, particular website that you visit a page that has a product, a service, something like that, right? So again, this is not just for online shopping. In the context of a nonprofit with fundraising initiatives, right? You might be looking at who's visited key pages of your website, your volunteer page, your donate page, most obviously, maybe reading your annual report. You would say those people might be interested in the product, quote unquote, of donating to our cause, right? So you could retarget those people with ads to drive them back to your donate page to complete that donation. The example I gave of the membership-based organization, right? A professional association, same thing. They're clicking around the association website. Maybe they're reading some articles in the blog, the online magazine. Maybe they look at the membership or the conference options. You could retarget somebody with ads to bring them back. So site retargeting is using the information that you gather from they visited your website. They looked at this specific page. They looked at this combination of pages, but they didn't make it to that page, right? And the most common one for didn't make it to is, for example, of the online fundraising. If they didn't make it to the thank you for donating page, right? That would mean we want to drive them back to the website to finish that, right? So you're trying to get them to that donation conclusion checkout process. And you would want probably to exclude people who did, right? If they already donated, you're not trying to target them with ads the next day to come back and donate again. Maybe you revisit them a few months later, but for right now, you would want to exclude them, right? So you can target or exclude based on specific web pages visited. So that's site retargeting, and that tends to be the most bang for your buck. So if you're going to start somewhere, that's where I'd recommend, because these are people who are already visiting your organization's website. They know who you are. They're engaged in some way, at least. They're coming to your website already, so they're a warm audience. And you have some insight based on the specifics of which pages they visited into their interests, into their level of intent. So that tends to be the best place to start. And the next most common and popular way of doing this, because it's also a warm audience, next best place to start would be what we call email mapping here at Feathr. Some people call this CRM retargeting. Facebook calls this custom audiences and a customer list match subtype within that. But essentially, it's you have information in your CRM, in your membership database. You have an email list. So you have first-party data, and you are onboarding that to an advertising tool, and that list of emails is being used to try to match, to find those people around the web. And so maybe they used that email address to log in somewhere else around the web, or they used it for a checkout, donation with another organization, or with a shopping profile, or they signed up for a newsletter, right? That email address they're probably using, because if it's their main email address or one of the two that they have, they're probably using it over and over and over again around the web. And there's a whole cottage industry behind the scenes of matching devices and cookies and IP addresses to that email. So you know that this email equals this range of, again, devices and cookies. So they're kind of making that match. And so what you could do with an advertising tool is you can upload a list of emails. That tool can match it to known cookies to be associated with that email. And so say maybe you match 60% of the list, and you can now retarget with ads to that email list. So you're not actually sending them emails, you're just using the email address as the unique identifier to find them around the web. And then you can retarget them with ads just like as if they had visited your website. So just merely the fact that they're on your email list allows you to target ads. This can be particularly useful for doing like a 1-2 punch between email campaigns and ad campaigns, because you can target the same people. So that's email mapping. A couple other ways here. So those two are most popular because, again, it's the warm audiences that already know who you are. These four here, these are more ways for reaching net new people. And I'll just go through these a little bit faster. But geofencing, somebody who's in a specific building or in a specific city block recently. So you're targeting devices that were in a physical location recently. Search keywords, kind of as the name suggests, you're targeting ads to people who recently performed online searches. This is different than the Google sponsored results on a search result page. What this is referring to is the ability to target display ads to people or video ads to people who recently did a search. So has somebody done this search within the last 30 days? I want to retarget them with display ads now. So it's a little bit different than bidding on a search result page, but you're using the same type of intent of what search did they recently perform. Lookalike audiences, again, as the name suggests, is trying to find people that look and act similar to your existing audience, to your website traffic, to your email list. And this essentially, there tends to be some kind of algorithm and a little bit of a black box that the technology tool you're using has their method of tapping into first-party and third-party data sources to find that. But that's the concept here, is they're going to look at what can we see about the website visitors we have here? What can we match to third-party sources about them to enrich that? And then how can we find more people around the web who look and act similar, whether that's based on, again, location, demographic, shopping behavior, all manner of different factors are brought to bear. And then this third one here, tagged audiences, is what I call it. Tagged audience is essentially using the same types of criteria I mentioned in lookalike, but the lookalike one is this black box where an algorithm is matching it for you. The concept of this tagged audience one is essentially there are these third-party data aggregators, and they just make it available to you. There's like a click, drop down. I want to target the people who are interested in these topics, who live in this area, who shop in this manner, right? Or I want to target people who make this income and work at companies in this industry, right? And so forth. So there's just these third-party data aggregators that they try to match these things and assess these things, and then they make available to advertising tools the ability to target those lists. So they do the tagging and aggregating of the audiences for you, and they provide a label and a little bit of information about who is on this list. This is all anonymous. You don't know who the people are. You just know, or you're trusting that this third-party data aggregator has done their job well, and like, okay, these are people who make $100,000 plus, and they're 65 plus in age, retirees that live in suburbs, right? That might be an example of a tagged audience. And you can select it from a dropdown, and then you can target it with your ads. So these 4 ways down here, geofencing, search keyword, lookalike, and tagged audiences, these are ways to reach net new people who don't know who you are. They're not on your email list. They haven't been to your website. And so that informs kind of where they fit in the marketing funnel. So these 4 are best for that top of the funnel awareness, whereas retargeting and email mapping, these are best for kind of mid-funnel, bottom of funnel engagement. We're coming up on time here, so I want to make sure if anyone has questions that you have a chance to ask them. We've got 3 minutes left and we'll be done at 1:30. So if you have questions now, we'd love to hear them and I'll answer them. What do we got? Here's one. Yes, we'll be able to share the presentation. Absolutely. We'll definitely share it right after this, and we'll share recordings as well. Oop, that was my little timer for myself. Yep. I got a couple more slides I could do with the last 2 minutes if no one else has questions, but we'll definitely share that. Another thing, I'm going to launch a poll right now, which is if you are interested in learning more about Feathr and seeing a demo of specifically how we do some of the things mentioned here today, let us know. We'll be happy to follow up. So we provide digital marketing and advertising tools that do lots of the things that have been talked about today. So if you're interested in seeing a little bit more specifically how Feathr does it, let us know. And I'll leave that up for a second. Oh, wait, great question. So what kind of budget is required to start site retargeting? Right, so you can start it with as little as $100, right? If you want to do a more meaningful campaign, generally I would recommend starting with a few $1,000s because that would give you money to run some tests and to have the ability to, over a sustained amount of time, continue to reach people. But one of the beautiful things about retargeting is you do get bang for your buck. And so if you only had a few $100s, you would still be able to reach the warmest people who have visited your website. And you can scale it up based on the size of your audience. If you have hundreds of thousands of people visiting your website, you probably need tens of thousands of dollars to maximize it. But if you have only a few thousand people visiting your website, maybe you only need a few $100 to maximize it from a retargeting standpoint. Another question just came through clarifying, are we going to share it to this deck to everybody? Yes, we will share the deck and the recording out to anybody who signed up for this webinar. So on the budget front, when it gets into strategy, then you get into, are you trying to reach net new people? That tends to be a little bit more expensive because that's cold. You need to warm them up and bring them down the funnel. Whereas just site retargeting is the warm people who are already visiting your website. So it's a good question, Katie. And I think we'd love to have a longer conversation about that one. A lot of factors. Great. Well, we're at 1:30. I appreciate the questions and appreciate you spending 30 minutes of your time here today. As always, if you're interested in learning more about Feathr, please do reach out. And if you have any suggestions for webinar topics you'd like to cover, anything you'd like to give us in feedback, we are always here for it. So we'd love to hear that too. Hope you all are having a wonderful Thursday. And thank you for your time.